Hello again, and welcome to episode 18 of Know Your Ship with me, Chase. In today's episode is going to be about the Sumner Class destroyers. These destroyers were commissioned by the U.S. Navy during World War II as an improvement upon the preceding Fletcher Class destroyers. The Sumners displaced 3,500 tons at full load, were able to go at 34 knots, and had 3 dual 5-inch gun mounts. They were also equipped with a plethora of 20mm and 40mm anti-aircraft guns. Notable vessels of this class included the USS Laffey and the USS Mannert L Abele, both of which were involved in Kamikaze attacks. The Sumner Class destroyers will appear as the Tier 9 American destroyers in World of Warships. Aside from that, I hope you all sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode.
April 16, 1945. The destroyer USS Laffey, accompanied by support ships LCS-51 and 116, is patrolling waters 50 miles north of Okinawa. The ship is on radar picket duty, a new defensive tactic that positions a ring of destroyers around the main invasion force to create an early warning system against incoming aircraft. Laffey is manning station number 1, the closest to Japan. The last 4 destroyers to patrol this area were slammed by kamikazes. Ari Futridis is a 19-year-old quartermaster on Laffey.
We knew that being the first in the line of defense was dangerous, but we didn't realize to what extent.
At 7:44 a.m., radar picks up a solitary Val dive bomber 6 miles out, approaching off the port bow. Laffey's 5-inch guns quickly open fire. At 3 miles, the Val jettisons its bomb and turns away.
Probably came in just to look over the situation and then took off.
Then, at 8:29 a.m., a swarm of 50 Japanese planes appears on the horizon. The attackers circle ominously, like vultures. The USS Laffey is about to face the most unrelenting kamikaze attack in history. The swarm includes Val and Judy dive bombers and Cape torpedo planes. Older aircraft equipped for suicide attack.
These were outmoded aircraft. They could be loaded with explosives. They were relatively easy to fly and stable platforms for doing what they had to do, which is to aim at a ship and try to hit it.
Al Doris watches the terrifying procession from his 40mm gun mount.
Well, they were just about every place you looked. You know, you could see a Japanese plane.
Suddenly, 4 Vals break formation and bear down on Laffey.
They were coming in low on the water, and somebody on our gun said, well, here they come. They're coming now.
2 head for the starboard bow. Captain Julius Beckton orders Laffey to come about, hard left 30 degrees, to bring all his guns broadside to the attackers. Laffey unleashes an anti-aircraft barrage. First, the main battery, 5-inch radar-directed guns.
And then they get in a little closer than the 40s. And they get a little closer, then the 20mm will start rattling at them. We just try to stop them as best we could.
Laffey splashes the first 2 attackers, but the other 2 Vals wheel around to come in from the stern. One Val sheds pieces of fuselage until its fixed landing gear catches the water. Tracers converge on the second Val. Laffey is barely spared a moment's respite before a Judy screams in from 90 degrees to starboard. Judies are a fast dive bomber, top speed 340 miles per hour. But this one's heading in at a poor attack angle. All of Laffey's guns can train their fire on the Kamikaze. But immediately another Judy barrels in on the opposite side. The destroyer's top speed is 35 knots, and it can turn sharply. Captain Becton orders 30 degrees hard right rudder.
This diving Judy was also strafing with its guns, trying to take out personnel on the command bridge. And so we had briefly a two-way gunnery duel between an oncoming Kamikaze and the defending gunners.
The Judy is no match for Laffey's main battery. The aircraft disintegrates. But its bomb detonates in the water, spewing killing shrapnel over exposed areas of the ship. Planes are coming in from every angle, using specialized tactics developed over months of experience.
A kamikaze attack isn't exactly an easy thing to do. You have about 500 kilos of explosives on board, and you are going at exceedingly fast speeds from very high up. To actually hit the target, it's very difficult.
The Japanese have determined that the most effective attacks are from extremely high or extremely low angles. In the high-angle attack, the Kamikazes approach at 20,000 feet, angle 20 degrees down to 5,000 feet, then a steep 50-degree high-speed dive. For the low-angle attack, the Kamikazes approach below 40 feet to hide under radar. When they near the target, the pilot pulls up to 1,500 feet for the final plunge, relying on speed and gravity to reach the target, even if his aircraft is hit. The ideal Toko mission can muster enough kamikazes to use all approach tactics together. Precisely what Laffey is facing now. At 8:39 a.m., a Val approaches from the port side, directly amidships. Laffey maneuvers violently to throw off the pilot's aim. Laffey now presents a smaller target. The ship is 377 feet long, but only 41 feet wide.
This did have an effect, apparently, on the Val pilot because he was having to constantly change his aim in order to keep his aircraft heading for the mass of the ship. Eventually, because of the swing of the Laffey, the Val was now coming in from almost dead astern.
It's as if Laffey is in a dogfight with the Kamikaze. AAA hits home, but the Val's momentum carries him in. It's a glancing blow, but the plane's ruptured gas tanks spew a lethal arc of combustible fuel. Then, a ninth kamikaze bores in. The Val approaches at wavetop level, too low an angle for the main gun battery. The plane rips into a 20mm gun mount amidships, killing 3 men. Another Val approaches dead astern, obscured by the billowing smoke. The carnage reaches below decks. Crewmen enveloped in flames race topside. Sailors aboard LCS-51 steaming nearby witness the terrible scene.
Several men who were working below decks came roaring out of there and jumped over the side, just full of flames. We picked 2 of them up. It was nasty. It was nasty.
At 8:47, 17 minutes into the attack, gun mount 53 takes a direct hit. The Val's engine lodges in the 5-inch gun, knocking it out. Aviation fuel engulfs the gun mount and ignites.
There were 14 men inside that gun mount at that time, and 6 of them were killed.
It seemed like a constant pattern of attack. In fact, at one point, I remember thinking to myself, my God, will this never end?
In the furious action, one of the Kamikazes swings past the Laffey and targets LCS-51, steaming off the port side.
One of the planes came in maybe 10 feet off the water. And of course, our guns on that side of the ship were all awning. One of us hit the bomb about 20, 30 feet from the ship. The bomb detonated and blew the plane to smithereens, the engine right into the side of our ship. My spotter, who was in with the director tub with me, put his arm up to shield his face. He put his arm up and was all over. He had 3 or 4 aluminum rivets in his arm that came from the plane.
Back on Laffey, fires are blazing on the fantail. Captain Becton is forced to cut his speed.
If you run too fast, you're going to fan the flames and make them stronger. But if you go too slow, then the enemy's going to be able to hit you better. So what he would do, he would slow down so they could fight the fire, and as the enemy got closer, he would increase his speed.
But another Val is lining up high astern, drawn to the raging fires like a shark to blood. The ship takes evasive action and swings hard to port. This Val is making a bomb run. Kamikaze formations were often accompanied by conventional bombers. A single 500-pound bomb hits the destroyer, jamming the rudder 26 degrees to port.
Having the rudders jammed permanently in this location meant that the ship could only steam in a left-hand circle. Captain Becton could come up with variations such as changing engine speed in order to broaden or tighten the turn, but still this was a severe limitation on his defensive abilities.
Fires are raging. Steering is damaged. Laffey is fading fast. USS Laffey is being hammered by a swarm of 50 kamikazes. Now, 4 FM-2 Wildcats from Navy Squadron BC-94, flying off the carrier Shamrock Bay, are vectored in to try to save the ship. The FM-2 is an updated version of the venerable F-4F Wildcat. The new airplane has a more powerful 1,260 horsepower engine. It can easily outfly the obsolete planes attacking the Laffey. Reman and his wingman, Dick Collier, climb 500 feet above the kamikaze formation, target a Val, and quickly dive in from the side. Reman hurtles in, aiming his 450 caliber machine guns. But his wingman unknowingly drifts into the line of fire.
Collier, he was right on my wing and he got in between us. So I couldn't shoot after that because I'd have shot Collier.
Collier gets the kill. Reman quickly lines up behind another Val. Opens fire. and explodes the enemy's wing tanks.
We were on them so fast they didn't have time to really do anything. They had no place to go except down.
2 kamikazes break through the fighter screen and pitch over into a death dive on the Laffey.
Well, when they got in close enough, you could see the pilot sitting right in the cockpit. And he's not looking one way or the other, he's looking right straight ahead. And he's aiming that plane right at you. You can't imagine what goes through somebody's mind that does that.
Both planes hit their mark. Pressing the attack, Riemann sweeps behind a Cape torpedo plane and smokes the engine. But he's used the last of his ammo.
Well, if I'd had more ammo, I could have shot down more airplanes. In the vernacular, I was just totally pissed off because there was a lot more to shoot at.
Riemann makes diving passes at kamikazes, forcing some to break off their attacks. But finally, low on fuel, his flight must return to the Shamrock Bay.
We shot down 6 airplanes, and that's 6 airplanes that didn't hit the Laffey. And we're just only sorry we couldn't keep all of them off of her. She was burning bad. I thought she was gone.
Laffey has now been struck by 5 kamikazes and taken 3 bomb hits.
The skipper sent me down to get an assessment of the damage back aft. And then I saw what these planes had done. I saw the gun mounts. I saw that there were fires. I saw a lot of human carnage. I think I might have been in a state of shock when you see things like that.
When a crewman suggests throwing in the towel, Captain Becton responds with indignation. "I will not abandon ship as long as a single gun can fire." Then, just as all seems lost, a dozen American Corsair fighters roar in. They are the last hope for the burning Laffey. Now, not a moment too soon, Marine Corps F-4U Corsairs scream in.
We looked up and saw them. Well, that took a lot off of us because they kept them busy from then on.
The F-4U Corsair was one of the most advanced naval fighters of the Pacific War. Its distinctive bent wing derived from the clearance needed from its huge 13-foot propeller. The shape also reduced aerodynamic drag.
The Corsair had a clear advantage over any Japanese aircraft. High speed, tough, very maneuverable, take a lot of punishment.
Time and again, the Corsair pilots risked their own lives, chasing the kamikazes down through Laffey's unceasing anti-aircraft fire. One is hot on the tail of a Ki-43 Oscar.
This Japanese plane was coming in and the Corsair come up underneath of him. Tried to raise him up to get him away from the ship.
The Oscar shears off the port yardarm. The Corsair hits the ship's radar antenna and careens away, badly damaged. The courageous American pilot manages to bail out. Suddenly, a bow looms menacingly towards the bridge, R.A. Fotridi's battle station.
was very vivid in my mind. There was a huge bomb under his belly. And as he approached, the bomb got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I really felt at that point that I was going to be a statistic.
But at the last second, gun mount 52 traverses from port to starboard.
He hit the plane directly on the nose and it disintegrated. That I remember very vividly.
Finally, the 22nd and last attacker, a Judy, streaks in. A Corsair blasts the Kamikaze before it could strike the ship. Now, only the roar of the Corsair's 2,000 horsepower engines fill the sky. After 80 minutes of non-stop combat, 6 Kamikaze strikes and 4 bomb hits, incredibly, Laffey is still afloat. Of a crew of 355, 32 men have died and 71 more are wounded. But the destroyer will survive to fight another day.
I lost a lot of good friends, and a lot of the guys were wounded, and it made you think how lucky you were not to get a scratch.
I think there were several factors involved in our survival. I always point to the competency of our commanding officer and the way he maneuvered the ship during the attack. There was the combat air patrol, which helped us out. Our crew was a brave crew, especially the gunners. And finally, I am convinced in my own mind that we had a little help from above.
The Okinawa campaign saw many brutal kamikaze raids of the type endured by Laffey. It also marked the brief appearance of the most insidious suicide weapon of World War II, called Oka. April 12, 1945, radar picket station 14 off Okinawa. Destroyer Mannert L Abele is battling fires after being hit by a Zero kamikaze.
The plane went through the deck and down and broke both our shafts of our screws on the ship, which put us about dead in the water.
Just 5 minutes after the kamikaze strike, 3 Japanese Betty bombers are spotted inbound from the north at 20,000 feet. What the Americans don't know is that suspended within the open bomb bay of each Betty is an appalling new suicide weapon. A single-seat, rocket-powered, piloted bomb developed by the Japanese Navy. It's called Oka, or Cherry Blossom. The Americans derisively nicknamed the weapon Baka, or Idiot. But they will discover to their horror that the piloted missile is virtually unstoppable. 3 Betty bombers carrying Oka kamikaze rocket planes approach the crippled destroyer Mannert L Abele. Inside one of the bombers, Lieutenant Saburo Dohi is awakened from a nap and climbs down into the Oka's cockpit. The human guidance system is now in place. The Oka is released. Its plunge begins as an unpowered glide. 1 minute from impact, Lieutenant Dohi kicks in his solid rocket boosters. The Oka makes its final sprint to the Abele at over 500 miles per hour. Able seaman Jim Morris spots something he's never seen before.
Somebody said, "Look at that," and I looked up, and that's when I saw the Baka bomb coming in. It was coming in from our starboard quarter, And I watched that rascal. To me it looked like a flying torpedo. I had no idea what it was.
The destroyer's 5-inch mounts can't move. 40mm and 20mm guns open fire at the mysterious incoming object. The ship's midsection is obliterated.
When it hit, that whole ship just shook all over. And that's when I went over the side. It went down in two pieces. The stern came down and the bow came down. Like that.
Within 3 minutes, Mannert L Abele vanishes. 79 men are lost. The Oka has left its murderous calling card.
Sumner Class destroyers actually enjoyed a pretty good service life lasting all the way into the 1970s. From 1960 to 1965, 33 ships of the class received the Fram II modifications. These modifications most notably provided the Sumner Class destroyers with a helicopter landing platform at the rear. Now if you look at this photo, you'll see that there's 3 ships in the middle, DD 728, 730, and 744, that have this helicopter landing pad near the rear gun. Now, these landing pads, however, were a bit too small for full-size manned helicopter, so instead, the Sumner Class destroyers with the Fram II modifications operated drone anti-submarine helicopters. Eventually, though, the Sumners were considered obsolete for the US Navy and were thus decommissioned. Their fates, on the other hand, were a bit more mixed. 7 of the Sumners were sunk by the US Navy as targets during training exercises, 13 of them were scrapped, and 29 of them were sold to a number of different nations around the world, including Taiwan, South Korea, Brazil, Turkey, Greece, and even the Shah of Iran. Currently, there are only 2 ships preserved as museums, the USS Laffey at Patriots Point, Charleston, South Carolina, and the USS Tausig in Taiwan. That's all, folks, for this episode on the Sumner Class destroyers. And if you like what I'm doing, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel, as I'll be uploading more videos in the upcoming days and weeks. Aside from that, I hope you all have a fantastic day, and I'll see you all on the high seas.